What are some common business expenses? Well, based on the IRS Schedule C, you have certain expenses such as advertising, car and truck expenses. And to go back to advertising, let's say that you are new to business. How do you get the word out there? Maybe you do social media marketing. Maybe you put an ad in a newspaper. You know, the IRS is looking for ways of how you're going to promote your business so that you can bring in income to show that it is a business and not a hobby. Car and truck expenses. If you drive your car for business, your personal car, you can use two methods to take that deduction: standard mileage or actual expense. Standard mileage is where you have a flat rate that you're able to take for every business mile. Actual expenses is when you actually are able to deduct gas, repairs, car insurance, financing fees, leasing fees for your car. However, if your car is only 50% business, 50% personal, you only get to take that percentage of actual expenses. Now, as you can tell, standard mileage is much easier to track, and depending on your profession, it may result in a higher deduction. But you can switch between the two based on whichever is higher. However, in your first year, you always want to use standard so that you can do that switch in the future. A couple of suggestions for mileage tracking. MileIQ is a great tool out there. And QuickBooks Self-Employed, if you are eligible for that subscription, it has a mileage tracker feature in it. I would definitely recommend to automate it so that you are not trying to manually keep a log, pen and paper, not keeping up to date with it. And you need that log to prove that deduction. You can't just say, oh, on average, I did this amount of miles. Some other common business expenses. Contract labor. So let's say you're in business for yourself. However, you need help and you don't have someone who's an employee, but maybe someone who's another contractor who helps you out here and there. When you hire that one as a contractor, the first thing you want to do from them is get a W-9 before you even pay them. This will allow you to collect the information you need for their ID number, entity type, and address, and so on. If you pay them over $600 in a year, you have to issue them a Form 1099, which is due January 31st. You don't want to mess up on that because the fees for the penalties are huge. Other business expenses, depreciation. When you purchase an equipment, let's say it's about a $5,000 piece of equipment, you don't necessarily get to deduct it all in the same year you purchased it. There are some accelerated tax deductions available nowadays where you may be able to, but in general, fixed assets, which are items that last more than a year, are depreciated over time. Insurance. When you're new in business, you may need liability insurance to cover yourself. You may need several types of workers' comp, or depending on what type of structure you have, various levels of insurance you may need. So that could be a common business expense. Legal and professional services, very common. Obviously, you're going to need some accountant, maybe a lawyer, some fees that you're going to incur in order to properly run your business. A couple more common business expenses, and then we'll take a quick break. Office expense. So, whether you're at a home office or whether you have a storefront, you're going to have common office expenses, small purchases, carpeting, lighting fixtures, small equipment, maybe a printer or something, a couple $100, common office expenses. If you rent a space for your business, that's going to be a common deduction. Now, if you have a home business, I would not suggest that you call that rent. There's certain ways to deduct that on your taxes, and that can be clarified with your tax accountant. Supplies, pens, pencils, paper, printer, ink, etc. Meals, this is a big one. If you're in town where you locally live and you're eating a meal with a client or potential client, that's a deduction. If you are out of state traveling for business, all of your meals are a deduction. Now, if you are in town and just grabbing lunch for yourself, that is not a deduction for your business. So common things to keep in mind with that. Also, when you do your taxes, only 50% of those meals will be deductible. One big change for this year, 2018, is there's no longer a deduction for entertainment expenses. So let's say you want to take a client out to a ball game, sporting event, golfing event. Those expenses are no longer deductible. Travel. If you have to travel out of state for business, take a flight. If you have to take an Uber somewhere, if you have to take public transportation somewhere to visit a client or potential client, that's a valid business expense. And so travel is a common expense. Wages and payroll. Let's say you hire an employee. You're going to have their salary or hourly wage as an expense, along with the payroll taxes. When you hire someone, you pay half of the payroll taxes and they pay the other half. And then other. There are miscellaneous deductions that may not be laid out on your tax form. However, they may be valid business deductions. And so you want to take a look at everything that you're spending in your company. And if you can't find a preset category in your software, just create one. And when it comes time to do your taxes, your tax accountant will work with that on you.